Good day, learners! Welcome to another session of Learning Journey with Dr. Jerry. At this moment, we will be talking about the 4 sources of educational law. And here are the following outcomes that we would like to achieve. First is we would like to explain the different sources of educational law. Also, we would like to distinguish the specific purpose for each sources of the law. So what are you waiting for? Let's get started. As mentioned earlier, in the Philippine setting, there are 4 sources of educational law. We have what we call the statutory law, we have the administrative law, we also talk about jurisprudence or case law, and last but not the least, we will be discussing the constitutional law. Let's look at each of these sources of law more deeply. So what is statutory law? Let me explain it this way. Imagine you are driving one day going to work, and while you are driving, suddenly your phone rings. And so what do you do when your phone rings? You take a look at your phone and then you scroll up and down and you see that there's a text message from an important person. So you start typing your message, your response to the person. Unfortunately, there is a police officer just beside the road. And what does the police officer do? Well, the police officer flags you down and gives you citation for driving while using your mobile phone. You broke a statutory law. Why? Because the Philippines has a law called RA 10913 or Anti-Distracted Driving Act. This is a prime example of statutory law. So what again is a statutory law? Statutory laws are formally written and enacted laws. So these laws were created, were drafted, they were established by a legislative body in the government. In the Philippines, we have the 2 houses. We have the House of the Congress and the Senate or the upper house. These 2 houses, they craft what we call bills. It can be House bill or Senate bill. Now, these bills that the senators and the congressmen draft, they have to go a tedious process until the president signs it into law. Now, once these are enacted into laws, then if you break them, you are breaking a statutory law. Example, in the Philippine educational setting, we have the K-12 law, which was signed by President Aquino. Recently, President Duterte also signed the Free Tertiary Education Act, and it becomes a law now. So once an institution or an individual breaks these acts, these republic acts, then they are breaking statutory laws. So again, statutory laws are enacted laws by a legislative body in the government. Administrative laws. This is the second type of law, and these are those laws which regulate the powers, the procedures, and acts of public administration. This law applies to all public officials and agencies. For example, the Commission on Higher Education issues a CHED Memorandum Order or CMO that must be observed by all higher educational institutions. One of the recent CMO orders is the CMO 27 series of 2017. To those who are not aware, this CMO basically streamlines the education majors in the country. Before we have Bachelor of Education, Bachelor of Secondary Education major in Biology. But because of CMO 27 series of 2017, we now have Bachelor of Secondary Education major in Sciences. And of course, this CHED memo must be followed by all higher educational institutions. And of course, this CMO must be followed, must be observed by all higher educational institutions. The Commission on Higher Education and the Department of Education are not the only 2 administrative bodies that make or that enact administrative laws. We still have other departments. And it is important that we are aware also of the administrative orders that are issued, especially by the Department of Labor and Employment for labor issues and whatnot. So the second type of law is the administrative law. Jurisprudence. This is the third source of law. Jurisprudence is also called case laws. They are called case laws because these are decided cases or written opinions of individual performing judicial functions. Now, included in these are the rulings by the administrative and legal tribunals such as the presidential, Senate, or House electoral tribunals. This is the reason why we as educators must be abreast with the latest decisions, especially landmark decisions by the Supreme Court. Remember that when we talk about jurisprudence, we only consider the Supreme Court decisions, not the lower court decisions. Why don't we consider the lower court decisions? Because lower court decisions can be appealed up to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court decisions are considered final. Now, let me remind everybody that when we talk about jurisprudence, they are not just the decided cases. These can also include the rulings by the administrative and legal tribunals, such as the presidential, the Senate, or the House electoral tribunals. Now, let me share with you one of the most important landmark cases, especially as a Seventh-day Adventist. You will see here on the screen, we have there the two individuals. The first one was the former representative of Aangat Tayo, and the other one is actually the one who sued a certain school in Visayas because of Sabbath issues. And you know what? The Supreme Court made a decision in favor of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And as a Seventh-day Adventist educator, we must be aware of this landmark case because we can use it to support our stand in keeping the Sabbath holy. Especially those who are in public or state universities and colleges, this important decision will help you if you remain firm with your decision to stand for the Sabbath truth. Now, the fourth and final source of law is the 1987 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines. The Constitution is the supreme source of law. Anything that is enacted by legislative or administrative bodies, if they are contrary to the Constitution, then they can be declared void and null. Remember that nothing can override the Constitution except charter change or the new Constitution. And recently, in the political arena here in the country, they are calling for another charter change. Let us just be observant and see where it goes. Let me just remind everybody that in the Philippine setting, there are four sources of law. SAJC. S stands for Statutory Law. A, Administrative Law. J, Jurisprudence or Case Law. And then C is the Constitution. And remember that the Constitution is the supreme source of the law. But you know what? There is something that is higher than the Philippine Constitution. And that is the law of God. Why is the law of God the supreme source of law? Because Psalm chapter 19 verse 7 says, "The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul." The law of God, which is the 10th commandment, is the supreme source of law. And as Christians, my prayer is that we will stand true to the supreme source of law. Thank you so much for watching, and see you again in the next episode of Learning Journey with Dr. Jerry.